Hi! One of the new features added to Resolve 18 is an effect called Fast Noise. This type of effect is typically used to simulate a number of environmental effects such as fog, mist, water movement, and heat distortion. Unlike the magic mask and depth masking tools in my previous videos, this new effect is included in both the studio and free versions of Resolve. This feature is in your effects window under Open Effects, and towards the bottom of the list you'll find it under Resolve FX Texture Group, or you can just open the search bar at the top by clicking on the magnifying glass and then typing FAS into the search field. You can use it on the Cut, Edit, and color pages just like any other open effect. On the color page, it can be added as an effect to a corrector node, or it can be added to the node graph as an FX node to ease integration into an alpha channel. Most of what we'll be doing with it is going to be done on the color page so that we can use power windows to control the portion of the frame affected by the effect. To get things started here, I'm going to apply the fast noise effect to this farm clip here using the edit page. I'm not going to do anything productive with this clip. I'm just going to show how the effect works and what its settings are and what presets are available to us. We open the Effects panel and select the Open Effects category. Down towards the bottom of the list of effects, we find the Resolve FX Textures category, and this is where the fast noise is located. I drag and drop it onto the clip, close the Effects panel, and now you can see the noise effect obscuring the clip. In the inspector for the current clip, I click on Effects to get to the controls for fast noise like so. The UI is broken out into 5 sections, followed by the usual global blend setting. Our first section is called Appearance. The first option is a drop-down of various presets that we can use as starting points to control the effect. Custom means you'll use your own settings. However, if you choose a named preset such as Mist here, any changes you make to the settings will cause the preset selector to revert to custom. Default sets all of the settings for the effect to their default or neutral positions, much like clicking the reset button would do. Below default, we have Mist, Smoke, Water Surface, River, and finally Heat Haze. I'll set the effect back to default so we can look at the different settings. Scale allows us to control the size of the noise pattern. Moving to the left creates a smaller but sharper looking pattern. Moving to the right increases the size and softness of the noise pattern. I'll leave the pattern here to emphasize our next settings. HV, or horizontal and vertical ratio, lets us warp the noise pattern into either a horizontal or vertical pattern like so. This is useful when you want the pattern moving as if it's being blown by the wind or rising up off of a lake or what have you. Detail level allows us to control how many levels of fine detail are generated. Detail balance works in conjunction with detail level. Balance applies weighting to the different scales of detail. The slider lets you choose between stronger large detail or stronger fine detail. A value of 0 removes fine detail entirely. If detail level is at 0, the balance control will have no effect at all. And finally, we have evolution to wrap up this section. It changes the noise pattern gradually. The slider controls progress of the noise pattern over time rather than just modifying its current state. Right now, there is no auto animation defined, so the evolution has no real visible effect until we add that. In the next section, entitled Adjustment, we have a brightness control that allows us to set the brightness of the noise. We also have control over its contrast, and at the bottom here we have a saturation control. This control will add some chroma to the noise pattern, as you can see here, or we can select a color to use as an overall effect onto the noise like this. Below this, we have the position control, and this allows us to set the starting X and Y position for the noise, as well as its rotation. All of these controls are keyframeable, by the way. If I go over to the Viewer Overlay dropdown and select Open Effects Overlay, we'll get this on-screen control. It shows a line connecting a star and a circle. Clicking and dragging on the circle allows us to rotate the pattern, and clicking and dragging on the star allows us to click and drag to move the noise pattern just as the position settings would allow. The last setting here is a drop-down that allows us to specify how to control the position of the noise effect when a clip is resized or moved within the timeline. Our next section is auto animation. At the bottom is the seethe setting that controls the rate at which noise gets animated. If I set seethe to a non-zero value and then move the playhead, you can see there's a lot of motion imparted to the noise effect. Once you have a non-zero value assigned to seethe, the evolution setting back up in appearance will have a visible effect. Velocity X and Y allow us to impart directional movement to the noise pattern, either vertically with the Y control or horizontally with the X control. Again, very useful if you want to simulate, say, the wind blowing a smoke or mist pattern left or right, or mist rising from a lake or something of that nature. You can set a start frame for the animation to begin on. This will allow you to randomize that frame, or you can specify a specific frame below, and that defaults to be the first frame of the clip or 0. This only affects the animation, not the visibility of the noise itself. You can use Global Blend at the bottom here to control the visibility of the noise effect. You can think of that as an opacity control if you like. You can also keyframe the Global Blend so that you can fade the effect in or out of a clip as desired. In the output section, we have this checkbox to show us just the noise, but I think this is a bit buggy in beta here as its functionality can be hit and miss right now. Below that, we have the output setting that allows us to composite or overlay the effect onto the clip, which is the default, put the effect into the alpha channel if we have one, or use the noise pattern to warp the image itself like this. You would use this to impart a rippling effect for water, for example, whereas for, say, mist, you'd use the overlay option. If you've chosen the composite onto clip option, you're offered a number of blending modes that are available in most of the overlaid effects inside of Resolve, such as the soft light or difference or whatever is appropriate for your needs. Okay, that wraps up our quick look at the UI and all of the controls. Let's move on to the next part where we add some steam to some coffee. Coffee. For our first example of the fast noise effect, I have this shot of coffee being poured into this mug. I want to add some steam rising from the mug as the coffee is poured to convey that the coffee is indeed hot, using the mist preset as a starting point to add some steam to this coffee being poured. I'll play the clip here on the edit page. The coffee gets poured, but there's no steam to convey that the coffee is actually hot. The coffee was actually cold by the time the camera rolled on this. I might exaggerate the effect slightly here so that it's more visible on YouTube for this tutorial. We're going to do this on the color page where I can define a power window as a mask to restrict the effect to the coffee cup area of the shot. I've already created the mask and animated it for this effect. I did that beforehand in the spirit of not making this video a week long. If I go to my viewer overlay dropdown and turn on the power window overlay, we can see the mask that I created for this. This will make the steam effect only occur within the bounds of this mask. I also pre-animated the mask so the steam looks like it's rising up out of the cup instead of just fading it in to add to the realism of the effect. We don't need the mask in the viewer, so I'll turn the overlay off here. Opening the effects panel here, I've already added the noise effect to this node so we can look at the changes I made to the settings to get the look that I wanted. The preset shows custom right now, but I started out with mist. Let's turn the effect on and set the clip to its first frame. The scale is set to 1, which is the default. Detail level I set to 7 and the balance is set to 0.5. These values were arrived at basically by experimentation. I have the brightness and contrast turned up just slightly and no saturation. I left the position and rotation settings at their defaults. Under the animation section, I set the velocity Y up to 0.041 since I wanted the steam to look as though it's rising, and the seethe is set to 0.24 to make the steam actually animate. Seethe at 0 would create a static effect. For the output section, I have it set to composite onto clip, and I'm using the add composite type. I also dialed back the global blend to 0.159 to reduce the effect. If I crank up the global blend with the steam is visible in the clip, you can see it's way too much overkill. So reducing the global blend lets me control the intensity of the effect. Jumping back to the edit page, let's have a look at the final result real quick. So there it is. I'd probably dial the effect back a little bit more. Less is always more in these kinds of effects. Okay, I'm going to make one more change to the clip just to finesse it a bit more. I'll open the effects panel here. Under effects is the adjustment clip, and I'm going to drag that onto the track above my clip and extend it for the duration of my clip. Now I'll open the inspector window. Now using the adjustment clip, I'll zoom in like this. I'll bring back some of that headroom so we can see the pour in the steam and keep a bit of the handle still in the frame. I'll move the playback head to where I want to create an end for the fake slider shot that we're going to create here. Now I create a keyframe for the XY position of the clip, move the playback head to frame 0 at the start, and slide the clip over using the X position setting. That will create an automatic keyframe for us. Now we play it back. We have a fake slider camera move as the coffee is being poured, adding a little more interest to the shot. Okay, moving on to our next example, the water movement preset effect. I have a still image here of a water caustic pattern. I'm going to use this to add some motion to another still image of an indoor pool. I'll set the viewer to fit, and you can see that I've resized this image down and I've softened the edges of it. I softened the edges of the image using the crop tool in the inspector. I cropped each edge of the image in slightly and then adjusted the softness control to give the image this kind of feathered edge look like so. I also scaled and positioned the element using the inspector, this way to fit into my image of the indoor pool against a back wall. We will use the water effect to animate the caustics on the wall as if it's reflected from the pool itself. Turning off the track with the caustics, you can see the back wall here with its texture on it. Before we add the fast noise effect, I'll set the opacity of the caustics down to 15% like this, making the pattern barely visible. Again, less is more when doing these kinds of effects. I'll open up my effects panel, and under the open effects section, I can click on the search field at the top and type FAS and get the list filter to just the fast noise effect like so. Now I just drag and drop the fast noise effect right onto the caustic static image like this. It doesn't look like it did anything, but that's because of the opacity setting I'm using. I'll close the effects window since we no longer need it. In the inspector, under the effects pane, we find our controls for the fast noise effect. Again, it looks like nothing is happening, but again, that's due to the opacity setting that I used here. If I crank that opacity back up, you can see the noise effect quite clearly. For this effect, I wanted around 15% or so. Back on the noise controls in the inspector pane, I'm going to change the preset from default over to water surface like this. As you can see, there's already a big change to the way the caustics image looks. Playing the clip back, we can now see that the caustics image is being animated with a water effect. Even with all of the default settings for the preset, it really doesn't look half bad. Adding this little bit of animation adds some life to these otherwise lifeless still images and will allow us to use it as an actual video clip. Let's use the water effect preset again, but this time I'll use it to make some text look like it's rising up out of a swimming pool, and we'll use the color page to control what area of the clip is affected. I have this clip here of this public pool and some text crawling up the screen that says Oakwood Public Pool. So to make this clip a bit more interesting, we'll use the Fast Noise Effects Water Surface preset to make the text look like it's rising up out of the water. To do this, we'll head over to the color page where we can use a power window to create a mask and control where the effect is applied in the frame. The point at which I want the effect to stop affecting the text we'll say is, well, right about here. I'll zoom the viewer out slightly using the mouse wheel since I want the mask to extend past the edges of the frame. I'll click on the power window pane and select the square rectangle power window shape. Now I'll adjust it and size it into the frame where I want to apply the effect. We'll open the effects panel and I'll type FAS into the search window like so, and then drag and drop the fast noise effect onto my node like this. Now we can see that it's added the default effect to the masked portion of the clip. We'll choose the water surface preset from the settings like so. We'll head back to the edit page to have a look at it. You can see there's a bit of a hard edge on the transition point of the text, so we'll head back to the color page and add some feathering to that edge to make it look like a more natural transition coming up out of the water. I'll set the power window overlay active on the viewer like so. I'll click on the edge softening handles on the power window here to feather that edge a bit. Back on the edit page, we can see the text is shimmering with the water effect until it rises up past the water and becomes still. To enhance this, we could composite some water dripping from the text, but that's a topic for another video. For the last water-related effect here, I have this still image of a riverbank. Almost looks like a lake, but it'll do for our purposes here. We'll add the river water effect to this image. This effect is very similar to the water surface effect we just used for the pool. Again, I'll use the color page so I can control where the effect is applied within the frame. Back on the color page, you can see I've already set up a mask here that loosely follows the water's edge in the image. I've already added the effect here, and you can see that the preset is now set to custom because the default was moving the water all over the place in an unusable fashion. I'll turn off the mask and play the clip like so. You can see the effect direction tool in the center rotates the effect to make it move left and right. It's not bad. You could composite some birds flying in this shot, and it might do for a simple master shot for a narrative project if it was all you had and no budget to go out and shoot the real thing. Okay, let's move on to our next effect. Our next effect is the heat distortion effect. I have this clip here that shows a blazing hot day out in the desert somewhere. However, heat distortion can actually occur where there is no heat when using a long lens. For example, this clip is shot on a Super 35 sensor using a 500mm lens. That would be about 850mm on a full-frame sensor. It's exactly 1 mile from the camera to the traffic light. You can see lots of distortion in this shot, especially in the tree shadows going across the road from the right side. It was 48 degrees Fahrenheit, or about 9 degrees Celsius outside when I took this shot. This desert shot here that I'll use needs to convey a super hot day out in the desert. Currently, you can see there's no heat distortion in the shot. The shot is actually from a video game, so I want to add some heat distortion to try and make it look a little more realistic. For this, I'm going to mask off the foreground of the shot and apply the heat wave effect only to the upper portion of the frame so that it appears to be more off in the distance. To do that, again, we'll use a power window on the color page. Back on the color page, I'll bring up the power window pane and zoom out on the viewer with the mouse wheel slightly since I want to make the mask go past the edges of the frame. We'll create a rectangular window that stretches across half of the frame and covers it from left to right. Move it up to the top here where it belongs since we want the effect to only occur at the top portion of the frame. I'll feather or soften the lower edge of the mask to ease the transition into the heat haze effect like so. I'll move the edge of it up just a bit like so. Now I open the effects pane, search for FAS, and drag the fast noise effect onto our node like this. In the settings, we'll select the heat haze preset like so. The default heat haze is actually not too bad looking as we play the clip back. Pretty similar to the real life shot that I used as an example at the start of this section of the video. Back on the edit page, we can have another quick look at it, and I think it looks pretty good just by taking the default values for the heat haze preset. For our last example here, I have this shot of this guy walking towards what I assume is a pulp mill. For this shot, I want to add a smoke effect. However, I want the smoke to be concentrated more up towards the building and not in the foreground. That way the guy should look like he's walking into the smoke and into the unknown. However, in order to do this, I'll need to use the depth mask tool that's only in the paid version of Resolve. I apologize to the folks using the free version as you won't be able to perform this effect. Certainly, you can feel free to skip this section if you don't have the paid version of the application. But I wanted to show how you can use the free fast noise effect with the new depth map tool to achieve these kinds of effects. I've duplicated the video to the upper track here, and that track is currently disabled, so you can see the video on the lower portion of the video tracks. On this lower clip, I've already added the fast noise effect and customized the smoke preset. I'll turn it on here so you can see it. For the upper clip, I've added the depth map already, so when I enable that track over the left of the timeline here, it will give us an alpha channel to map that smoke into the back of the shot like this. I also set the clip to monochrome to add to the creepiness of it. I'll play the clip so you can now see the guy walks up into the smoke. The seethe setting really needs to be reduced here so the smoke is not shimmering so much. We'll tweak that in a moment. Here's what the depth map looks like in case you were curious. Okay, I'll reset the smoke effect by setting its defaults again like this. Enabling the depth map, the smoke effect looks pretty sparse, so we'll adjust the brightness of it to make it more prominent and adjust the scale and detail settings slightly. Under animation, I want to turn down the seethe setting and also turn off the Y animation and change it to H so that it looks more like the wind is moving the smoke. Bringing up the brightness just a bit like so. Now when we play the clip, the effect looks much more convincing. You can see how the guy starts to get obscured by the smoke effect walking up into the unknown. Very cool. All done on the edit page as well. Okay, that's it for this tutorial. If you liked the video, please hit like as that helps other folks find it. Thank you so much for stopping by and watching this, and until the next video, take care.